What is up, guys? So today, among other things, I'm going to talk about detoxing in prison. If you got locked up now, things are different now. If you got locked up tomorrow and you was a heroin addict, they would probably put you on methadone or Subutex or some kind of like heroin replacement just to get you through your time whilst you're there, because prison's hard enough without having to go through a heroin detox. It just makes it 100 times worse, and it's unnecessary suffering. That's what they class it as. So that's what happens if you get locked up now. But when I first started getting locked up back in the early 90s, they didn't have none of that. They would just throw you in a cell and they would put you on medication what they knew nothing about, what wasn't even for heroin detox, and they just used to take you in a place in Doncaster, my local, called the Lower Med, and it was like a dungeon. You'd go down in the elevator and it was just like a spur with loads of people rattling. There was a few cells down there, but that's what I'm going to talk about today, among other things. Now, the thing what's prompted me to talk about this was I was watching YouTube, and this guy who's just got locked up, he's clearly on drugs, and he's a guy called Vitali. He's some Russian streamer, and he's very successful. He's got like tens of millions of subscribers, millions and millions of views, and he's like a pioneer in the YouTube thing. He used to do the prank videos before everybody knew that they were staged and fake. So he was very successful. He was flying and everybody was enjoying his stuff. And then he ended up going out one night and it went to his head, all his fame, and he ended up knocking the fuck out of a woman, beat her up really bad and ruined his career, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? On the dark side, they're all woman beaters. But yeah, he's beat this woman up really bad, ruined his career. And I don't know if he got prison for it, but everybody went against him then. So he's gone away, disappeared for a while, and then he's come back, like rebranded himself, and he started doing predator stings, pedo stings. And I've got to be honest, I started watching him and I was kind of enjoying him. He was doing something different. He was doing it with famous people, and he got that guy who sings that song, "You're gonna get locked up, there ain't nah. What is it now? You're gonna get locked up, they won't let me out." A guy called Akon, and he did a predator sting with Akon, and as the pedo's getting locked up by the police, they did a live set, and Akon's singing "You're gonna get locked up," and they had music playing and everything. It was pretty creative. It was good content. I think they do it on something called Twitch. I don't think they do it so much on YouTube, but it does go on YouTube. And so yeah, I thought, right, well, this guy's back now. He's doing some good content. He's probably going to be successful again. And then a couple of days ago, he's gone to the Philippines and started harassing people for no reason, bullying people, going up to coppers, nicking their hats, and trying to take the gun and jumping on the bike to nick the bike. And what they do is they go live, and everybody in the chat will tell them to do stuff like, "Oh, go nick his bike, grab that copper's hat." So that's what he was doing. And he was harassing old women, threatening to rob them, and all for a laugh, for content. And he's got locked up for it. And they've paraded him now, because the Philippines is it's a good country, polite, nice, good people. But if you go there messing around, you're going to end up in prison. I think, didn't their president get elected for promising to kill all drug dealers? So you don't want to mess around in the Philippines, and he's gone there harassing innocent people, Filipinos, taking advantage of their kind natures. And he's done it all on camera, so he's documented his own demise, and he's been locked up for it now. They've arrested him and his cameraman. And yesterday, they made a decision, or the day before, said, right, we can either just deport him and get him gone, or we can punish him and put him in prison and hold him accountable, make a example of this guy, which is exactly what they should have done. That's why they're doing it, because they get away with it. There's no consequences. So they're just going to keep doing it, and they just harass people in the street for content. There's so many doing it now, and what they're doing is just acting like knobheads, bullying people online on a live for views and content. But he's been caught, and they put him in front of the magistrates, or whatever you call it, in the Philippines, and he's been remanded, so he's in prison now, and he's looking at like 12 to 15 years for nicking a copper's weapon. That's a really bad charge, and jumping on his bike and running away with a bike, he's ruined his life. For what? For a few views. And he was in court and he was still being a knob. He was laughing and you could see he was off his head on drugs. He was like, I thought, fucking hell, So I don't know where he's getting the drugs from. He must have packed some up his arse because he knew he was going to get locked up. But yeah, he's in prison now, and he's going to do a detox while he's in there. And that's what reminded me of the Lower Med. I started thinking about, fucking hell. I remember when I was locked up and I went and did a detox in prison. Now, like I said, back then, there was no methadone, no Subutex. They would just put you in a cell and give you something called Melorol, which is an antipsychotic. It's not for heroin withdrawals. I don't know what it does, but it don't work. It just made you worse. It made you piss stink horrible. It made you, if you stood up too quick, you were all dizzy and you'd fucking pass out. And it was just a nightmare. And like when you get remanded, you go to the prison, right? Mine was Doncatraz, and they used to put you on the Lower Med, and they would take you through the prison. I always remember detoxing, been in the cells for like 2 or 3 days. I was really ill, no sleep, no food, and it's just freezing. I always remember that about Doncatraz, walking down the long hallways, and all the windows were wide open, and the wind was just blowing through, and it goes straight through you when you're rattling. It's horrible. And they took us all the way to the Lower Med. And what they did is they put you on the Lower Med for like a week, and then they'd put you on normal location after you've done your rattle, because you don't want to be around other people when you're rattling. When you got stomachache, you've got puking up and all that. So you don't really want to be in a cell with somebody who's not like that. But yeah, they take you down this long hallway, get to the Lower Med, and you'd get in the lift, and it would take you down. And I always remember the smell. It wasn't a bad smell. It was like they call it the rattling smell. It's kind of like bleach mixed with heat. You can smell it in the air because all your senses get heightened because you've not slept, you're not eating. It's kind of like having the hangover. So you can smell the heat, you can smell the bleach, and I remember going in there. Everybody's miserable. The prison guards stood there. And it's like we're all going to fucking death row or something, because we know what's coming. Weeks of no sleep and rattling and suffering, and we go down in a lift, and then when you get on there, there's like a row of cells, then there's a dorm with probably like 10 beds in it, and then another row of cells. So you could either get put in one of the cells with somebody else, or they could put you in the dorm with like another 10 inmates. And just imagine that everybody's sick, everybody's miserable, everybody's scruffy and got runs and puking, and everybody's rattling. Everyone's got stinky feet. There's tramps from the street in there. It's a real tough, miserable place. I remember the first time I went in there, I went in a cell, so I was lucky. And I was on my own. I was with another kid from Donny. This is what always blows my mind. It's a small world, I remember I had a flat in Doncaster, and I was a bit of a knobhead when I was younger, and I was always causing trouble. And they brought this lad round, this big meathead, to look after the house, to make sure that I wasn't doing stuff, just to keep an eye on me, basically. And I walked in the cell, and he's in there. I couldn't believe it. I thought, fucking hell. And I said, I remember you. He was a glue snipper. And when we got in the cell, and it was rattling all night. And this is what it's like when you're rattling. You're fucking thinking about drugs, knowing that if you could just have some drugs, you'll be able to have a sleep. You'll be able to have something to eat. You'll feel normal. You'll stop sneezing. And the headache will go away if you can get some drugs. And I remember this kid. He was a heroin addict, and he said, I got busted like 3 days ago, and I swallowed 5 bags. And he got it into his head, then he said, I'll shit it out when we can smoke it. And so we was up all night, right? He's gone to see the nurse, and he's got prune juice and laxatives so that it can shit it, so it can crap on the toilet. And so he's sat on the pan, shitting all night, looking through it, trying to find these bags, what he's dropped, what he swallowed like 3 days ago. Obviously, they're not going to be there. They're going to be broken up and dissolved in his stomach. But, I remember being up all night with a little bit of hope, thinking, I hope he finds some. It's just, how did I end up in a fucking cell with a guy looking through his poo for some drugs? That's the lowest point in it of somebody's life. But that was one of the first times I got there. And there was like there was a telly, but you couldn't turn it over. You could hardly hear it. And it was like in a box right at the corner, so you couldn't even reach it. But there was a telly in there, which you didn't get back then. Nobody had a telly in the cell. So on the lower med, you was lucky because you had this telly. We couldn't change the channels, you just had to watch what was on, and you could barely fucking hear it. And there was like a little stereo built into the wall. It was such a weird little thing. It was like a square box with a knob on it where you could tune it and turn it up. And it was built into the wall, a radio. So we had a stereo and a TV. And I remember once they put me in the dorm, and just my luck, it was like 3 days in, and this kid came in. I'm not going to mention his name. He's probably dead now anyway. Most of the people are who used to be addicts. And he was known for getting visits. He was a drug dealer. So he's come in and everybody was buzzing. They're like, oh, he's going to get a visit later. And he said, yeah, I'm going to get a visit later. I'll make sure we're all right. Because you get people like that. Some people will be like, hide it away and not share it. But he wasn't like that. He said, yeah, I'll get a visit and then we'll have a boot. We'll all get some sleep. And anyway, it's come to like his visit time. He gets called out. Everyone's buzzing. We're all like, yes, he's on a visit. Not long now. And then just like half an hour later, the screws have come in and said, come on, Paddy, you're moving. I was like, no, there's a fucking visit coming here. You know what I mean? Let me stay here. But if you refuse, then they'll just put you down the block. So I was like, fuck, just my luck. And they've took me up onto a normal location, which they do after like 3 to 5 days when you've done your detox, or at least the worst of it. Then they'll put you onto normal location, the induction wing. So they've put me up there, and I was really gutted at the time. But then, like 3 days later, somebody came up who was on the lower med, and I said, "Oh, did he get that visit?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Did you have a boot?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "But I'm gutted now because it's put me right back to the day one. Like, if you go 3 days with no drugs and then you have drugs, then it's good. But then the next day you're back to square one. You've got to do another. Puts you right back to the beginning." So. In the end, I was glad I didn't have none, because now I was like a week into my detox and he was back to square one because he just had that boot. But yeah, that's just my luck in prison. And there's people, the tensions are high, everybody's like on edge, because they're not well, and there's fights happen all the time. I remember this gypsy guy came in, and there was a lad from Donny, he was a YO. So he had that YO mentality, and he got up. There was a big TV in the TV room. So you did have a TV in the dorm, so everybody could watch. And everybody was sat watching TV, and he's just jumped up and turned it over. And one of the gypsies at the back said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I'm turning it over." "And what?" And that typical YO mentality. And this gypsy just got up, walked over and bosh, clumped him. Just give him a swift Black & Decker and cut all his mouth open and put him straight in his place. And I ended up getting padded up with that gypsy, and he was getting visits, so I was fucking buzzing with that one. But yeah, that's what it's like. Everybody's on edge, everybody's miserable, everybody wants drugs, but there ain't none. And there was no methadone, no Subutex. You just had to do it raw on these Melorol tablets. And I remember once I came in, and I had a load of Valium around my waistband, because what I used to do was I used to get prescribed Valium, and I didn't really have them on the streets. I just put them all around my waistband of these pair of tracky bottoms, and I would always wear these tracky bottoms. So if ever I got captured, which was all the time, at least I would have them to fall back on, the Valium. And so I had a load of Valium in, and one of my mates, Kigo, he was in there. And he put me on to someone. He said, "Oh, he's getting a visit later. If you give him some Valium tonight," or "he's getting a visit tomorrow. If you give him some Valium tonight, he'll sort you on his visit." So I said, "Oh yeah, go on then, I'll do that." So I've given some Valium to the cleaner to give to this kid who was getting a visit. And he had a mate who was a real hard case, a boxer. And I've given them to the cleaner when we were all banged up. I said, "Here," and I give the cleaner one. I said, "There's one for you there. Give these to so-and-so." So he's like, "Oh yeah, well, nice one." And then the next morning, this kid's come round. He says, "Oh, you're getting fuck all, you." I says, "What's up with that? What are you on about?" He says, you fucking didn't send me a note last night. I says, I fucking sent you, I can't remember what I sent him, probably like 4 blues or something. Because Kigo told me, he said, yeah, he's solid, you know, he'll look after you. So I've said some for him and some for his little boxing mate. And he says, yeah, you didn't give me a note. I says, I fucking sent some with the cleaner. And he says, what, you get him to the cleaner to get to me? I says, yeah, fucking, you know, I'm not going to lie to you. If I say I'm going to do it, I do it. I'm solid. And Kigo was vouching for me. He says, yeah, if he said he did it, then he did it. And so what's happened is the cleaner's kept him for himself, even though I gave him one for doing it, just for passing it to another cell. He's ended up eating a lot. And so I said, I'll get him to him. He must have scoffed him. And he says, right, well, fucking, I'll sort it. And as I walked past the cell, I looked in, and this box is just fucking filling this cleaner in. And I didn't get him some more, and he got a visit the next day, and he sorted me out. So yeah, I was buzzing. But then once people know on the unit, you know, you get little knobheads coming to you, oh, give a couple of. I said, fuck off, mate, you know, and it causes a lot of trouble. But luckily for me, because it was my local, I knew lots of people on there, so I didn't really get any trouble out. But if I hadn't known everyone, then I could have got some trouble. And I always remember another incident as well. You used to get 1 shower a day. Like, what they had to do is, if you was in the cells, they would come round like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they would make you clean your cell out. They'd give you like a mop bucket, mop, and a sweeping brush. So you had to sweep your cell, mop it, and when you're rattling, when you're detoxing, it doesn't sound like much, mopping a cell, but you just can't be arsed because you've not slept, you're not getting no nutrition, or your body's just knackered, and just even little things like going in the shower and cleaning your cell out, it's like a monumentous task. It's like, can't be fucking arsed. But you have to do it. And they would give you 1 shower, 1 cold shower. Just, I mean, when you're detoxing, the cold goes right through you. You can feel it more than usual. So a cold shower is the last thing you want, but you've got to have a shower. And I remember I went into the showers, come back, and like later on in that day, what had happened is somebody had shit in the shower. Somebody had a crap in the shower and just left it on the floor. Which, why would you do that? You know, but you get people like that in prison. They're just fucking nutters. They're just scumbags, and they do it on purpose because they know it's going to wind everybody up and cause trouble. And you know, some people just want to see the world burn. And so somebody's gone in and had a shit in the shower, and it was on the floor. So everybody's kicking off, and then somebody says, "Oh, well, you went in," pointing to me. I said, "Yeah, I fucking did, but I haven't done no like that." And, you know, he got sorted pretty quick. But I remember the kid who did it. It was probably him, you know, looking back, thinking about it. Because he was a little fucking rat. He had a little ponytail. And he was one of those who, oh, yeah, I fucking knocked out 10 bouncers in town. And you're just like, fuck off, you little div. But, yeah, and that's the thing about prison. You could just, that's all it takes is for somebody. Like, if I didn't know people on the wing, then I could have got filled in for that, for taking a dump in the shower, and I didn't even do it. But it was just somebody saying that they saw me around that area, around that time. And that's all it takes in prison. You could be not involved, like, you could be walking past a cell, somebody's getting filled in, and then later on, they get nicked. But because you walk past the cell, they'll say, oh, he grasped me up, he walked past, even though there's cameras everywhere, of course you're going to get caught, you're on fucking camera. But that's all it takes, you know, in prison, and that's the reality of prison. It can be life or death in an instant over something that's nothing to do with you. But yeah, that's what it was like on the lower med. It was fucking doom and gloom. It was horrible. It had that horrible smell, that rattling smell, and the medication, Melorol, it didn't do anything. It made you worse. They did switch it up after a while to brittle effects. And then after that, they switched. I think that's when they switched to methadone and Subutex. And this is why with methadone, I remember one of the first times I got locked up and I was on heroin and they just brought methadone in. And the first night, they don't give you anything. They give you a very small dose because they don't want you to overdose. They don't know what you've had. that day. You know, you could have had 50 bags for all they know, and if they give you methadone on top, it could send you over. So they give you a very small dose for the first night. And I remember when I came in, I was on like 10 bags a day on the street, and they said, right, well, we'll put you on like 5 mil or something like that for your first night. And I was fucking 5 mil, that's not going to do it. I was gutted, you know, but there's no point kicking off. They're not gonna change their mind. That's the rules. And I remember they came, it was about 8 o'clock at night. And he says, come on, the nurses here. I was like, fucking buzz it. So I went up there, this tiny little dribble, fucking 5 mil of methadone. And I went back to my cell and I was gutted, you know. I sat down, I was ready for a full night of fucking no sleep, listening to the birds tweeting, suffering. And I sat down on my bed. And then next thing I know, I'm waking up 6 a.m. I was like, fucking hell, I've slept the whole way through. That's not 5 mil. And then they put you on to 40 mil the next day. That was fine for me. So that I don't understand when you see people and they say, I'm on 180 mil of methadone. It's like, you don't need that much. 40 mil is more than enough. But anyway, that's the 20 minutes mark. I've rambled on a bit today. But yeah, that's what it was like on the lower med. And they had to change it all because they called it cruel and unusual punishment. If you're thrown into a cell, you've got the right to see a doctor and get treated properly, and they weren't doing that. Loads of people put claims in and got loads of money off it. Me and my cellmate did it, but I pulled it away in the end. I was, I can't be arsed with this. But he carried it on and got thousands of pounds. I was fucking gutted. But anyway, that's the video for today. If you like this video, press the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Nerf the pop.